I wanted to give some thanks to two sisters in Christ that I listened to two different videos today, and I believe Renee Rollins was one I just listened to just a little bit ago, and hers. Yeah, honestly, the main reason it was kind of short and everything, and I try to kind of watch, and she hasn't been on there, or I haven't seen very many videos of hers lately, so I decided to click on it, and because it was talking about the price being paid in full by Christ. And I figured, she's pretty good and right on what she says and everything. So I was thinking, and still searching as a possibility of something maybe she said that might be simpler for my brother to understand, because he still in some ways isn't getting certain things. He keeps thinking that he has to keep going back and getting saved every week. Yeah, he's kind of caught in a loop. And anyways, with what she was talking about in the video and everything, I actually think that might actually get through to him. So I'm gonna pass it along to my mom and everything and see if that will help in any way. It was when she was talking about appropriation being full and final at payment, and the way she explained it was so simple. Even my brother, I think, will understand this, so that will help. But the main thing I was coming on here to make a video for was this morning I listened to Chelsi Bedell's video, and there was a couple others. I like Gigi on Blue Heaven. I listened to hers. I listened to some of the Tim Henderson ones, Watchman for the King, Watchman on the Wall 88. I listened to a few there, and different various ones that I listened to. I also listened to Paul Bakley Prophecy and Amir Sarfati and Faraj, JD Faraj, and Saved by Grace. There's a few of them. Lily Girl, I haven't seen her in a while. I usually listen to hers too. She's very inspiring to me, actually. Her and Renee and Chelsi. Very relatable. I'm just kind of starting out in mine. I mean, I've been watching for a long time, but actually didn't kind of have the courage to get on and tell some of my testimony or any I've been pondering sharing dreams for a long time and being prompted a lot from the Lord. I thought, well, I better do it. I'm getting more and more prompting, so maybe I should go ahead and do it. But anyways, why I came on today was the one I watched of Chelsi's earlier today was talking about how religion has hurt, many have been hurt by religion, basically, and which is true. I agree 100% with what she said, and I myself have had that happen too. And I don't know, it was just, there wasn't a lot of videos at one time together today, so I kind of got on looking at different other stuff and like skimming over the news and stuff. But then I thought, I'll just watch a movie or something. And I put on a movie called Comeback Dad. And I think had like Tim Dutton or Kim Dutton. Anyways, so a couple actors that I couldn't tell you exactly their names all, but pretty well known in a lot of good movies. Anyways, and even though the the subject matter is not exactly what happened to me, I understood some of what had happened to the character in the movie about her dad not being there. But mine was, well, my parents, when they got divorced, my dad only got to see me every other weekend, and when I did see him, it didn't seem like it was enough, and it made me really think about my dad and how much that I really miss him. I don't see my dad all the time. He's in a nursing home, and most of the time he is not that coherent. He has his good days and he has his bad days. And this has been, he was born in like 1939. So yeah, he's pretty up there in age, but when he was a lot younger, he was a deacon in a church, and he was really adamant prayer warrior and really loved the Lord and always had scripture to return for any situation. He wasn't always like that, but when he came to the Lord, it was such a difference night and day. And he knew of Christ before, and he went to church and everything with his family because most of his family was brought up Baptist. So they were kind of those sit in the pews, but they didn't really practice what they preach. So yeah, they would go to church, but they didn't really live church or live a very Christ-like life. They would scold you if you did something wrong, but they themselves would turn around a lot of times and do the very thing that they scolded someone else about. But that's kind of how some of the Baptist upbringing was in our family anyways. I don't know if it was for everybody, but anyways, after I watched that movie, I actually started crying, and it really got to me, and I realized how much I really miss my dad and how much time I did actually lose with him. And it revolves around family and some members that weren't too nice at a previous church. There was something that happened to my daughter, and had to be brought before the church and addressed. And when it was brought before the church, because we weren't sure exactly what to do, it was something that we had never dealt with before. Anyways, when we brought it before the church, it was supposed to be like where you would come to the deacons and they would talk to you and everything, and then that issue would be brought before the church. Because something that had happened, it concerned another person that was also going to the church. It was not handled the way it was supposed to at the time. Whenever it was brought before the deacons, they never had their meeting, or they had their meeting in private, never with like us. And then it was to be brought in front of the church. Well, normally the pastor would, or everybody together and everything, but this was done a little differently, because at the time our pastor was having surgery. So his nephew was doing the services and handling the church business and everything, while the pastor was away at the hospital. And my dad was deacon of the church at the time, and I was president of the choir at the time. My kids were all going. My mother was going there, and she was, I believe, secretary at the church or something. When it was brought to the attention of the church, it was done incorrectly. We did not get to say all what had happened, and because it involved someone else that the issue was supposed to be addressed, and come to find out later on, the person that the incident was with my daughter was having issues at their home. The Sunday school teacher was doing inappropriate things, and like having she would take kids to her house to treat them for ice cream or something. Not really inappropriate, but things that you like, okay, because she was single, so it's something that's not good for you to do, because it looks to be like favoritism, because we would never let my kids or anything go. Supposedly everybody had this impression my kids were bad, or they tattle, or this or that, and it was just some crazy stuff. But whenever she did and said something wrong scripture wise, and or she would teach something incorrect or something, or say something she shouldn't have said in the Sunday school, my kids spoke up and would call her on it. Well, my oldest boy, she was saying, well, he's too old to be in here, he needs to go with the adults. And then the one that was second to the oldest, when he spoke up and basically kind of corrected her that she had done something wrong, brought it to her attention, she kicked him out of the class. And my daughters and everything were still in the Sunday school, and she kind of quieted them down a lot, tried to keep them separate, and didn't give them a lot of the chances to say on any of the lessons or anything like that. She was more favored toward other ones, which it appeared that there might be something inappropriate between a student and her, but it was never completely confirmed. But one of those students is concerning them the incident with my daughter, and it was to be brought to the attention because of something that was done inappropriate. And whenever it was brought before the church, not all the members were there. Some of the members weren't there at all. And we were not allowed to do our normal duties that day. And we were supposed to, they were saying they were going to have like some special meeting thing to discuss this. Well, it was, there were people at the church, I found out later on, were actually members of the church, but they didn't go regularly. They hadn't been there in a long, long time. And they had called those people, contacted those people to come to the church, told the information of their side, not what had happened from our side and everything. So they only had partial information, and for to get their vote whether we stayed as members of the church. In other words, vote us out of church if they so decided to, because we were troublemakers supposedly, which was not right. The whole story was not laid out, and whenever they went to address the issue, what the kid had done inappropriately, the kid sat in the front, had his head down the entire time, didn't speak. The Sunday school teacher, which didn't know nothing about, except for secondhand information, what was said or done, and spoke for the child the entire time, and put my daughter on the spot to tell in front of the entire church what supposedly happened. So it's like, kind of like almost like putting a child up on the stand and making them talk in front of a whole room of grown-ups exactly what happened. And, kids are scared, It's not that if they don't talk that it didn't happen, they're a liar or nothing. It's just you put them on the spot. They're not expecting it. And there's certain ways you handle when you're talking or getting the information. A kid, you don't really put them on the stand. You get the information, then you bring that information forward. You don't put them in that kind of situation. But this is what they did. And we had to sit there the entire time, and while watching this farce, kangaroo court show, circus, whatever you want to call it. And we couldn't speak. We couldn't say anything in our defense whatsoever. We were basically told what supposedly the facts were, which was incorrect. And it was not the entire story. And I got kind of, I don't know if you would say it was a vision. It was like, okay, I was seeing what was going on there, but it's kind of like I had an overlay over my vision of the things when they were doing the trying and accusing and everything of Jesus, what they were doing to him, and all the lies they were telling and trying to catch him up and all that. It was like that overlaid the scene of what was going on in front of my face. And I started crying. But it was a heart-wrenching sorrow. And the pastor's son looked at me and said, "Why are you crying? 'Cause you got caught?" And I said, I'm not crying for me. I'm crying for you. You're making a big mistake. You don't know what you're doing, and you've condemned yourself. And he laughed. He thought it was funny. And during these proceedings, before it went to a close, and we were questioning why the pastor wasn't there, and did he know about this, and this isn't right, and everything, what you're doing and everything. And he the nephew picked up the phone and called the pastor, his uncle, at the hospital, and was talking to him, and we heard him on the speaker. And we were like asking like if he had known about it and what was going on in this. Okay, mind you, he's in severe pain. He's getting ready to go into surgery and everything, so he's probably not in the greatest state of mind at that time. And he basically kind of like said he knew all about it. And that was when our heart sank, that he knows and he's allowing it to happen. And we didn't think at the time, okay, he's in pain and that maybe they didn't tell him the whole story and that, and he's just kind of lashing out in a way because he's hurting and all that, because it was a possibility for him to lose his legs because he was diabetic and he was having all kinds of problems with it. And I think it was blood clots or something. I don't know exactly what was going on. I don't know all the details, but and then they took a vote, and they voted us out of the church, Well, this day, my son, before that day, had a dream that something bad was going to happen. And he didn't want to go to church that day because he knew something was wrong. And we didn't understand why. And we were like, why? You need to go. You need to be there too. And he said, something bad's going to happen. I don't want to go. And he was crying. And I didn't understand why until later. He probably saw what was about ready to happen. My dad was there as a deacon, and I don't think he knew exactly all what was happening either. I don't think they told him everything either. And he didn't say anything. He didn't speak up. The other deacon, which was a family friend, he was saying it wasn't right, this and that and everything, and so was his wife and everything. And they were saying, you can't do this isn't right. And I said, well, if you don't agree with it, you can leave too. And basically that was it was all our home church. And so we were like, no, you it's okay, and told them basically, don't, just stay, you don't need to be punished too, is basically what we were telling them. And it hurt them. You could see that hurt in their eyes, but they did. Many of the people weren't there. Certain people that would have definitely defended us and known this was wrong, what they were doing, weren't there at all. And our heart sank when that happened. It was very devastating, and it left an impression that if you stand up for something that somebody is doing that is wrong, that you're going to be beat down or made to shut up and go along with the majority, even if the majority is wrong. It gave a very bad impression, and it severely hurt my children and me and my mother, and separated our family, separated us from our church. And because my dad was a deacon and he lived in the parsonage on the church property, because we were kicked out of the church and we weren't supposedly allowed on the property, which later officially there was something that was done underhanded and sneaky that actually kept us off the property legally, because somebody lied about some papers and talked to a judge and everything, and the judge was only going by the facts that was told and didn't have all of the facts and made a decision on it. But anyways, we couldn't go see my dad or go to our own church and everything. So we left the church. And we found out later on that when the pastor had come back to church that next weekend, they lied to him. Because when we weren't there, he asked why we weren't there. And they said, we don't know. They just left. So he thought we just abandoned and left and didn't want to have nothing to do with anybody anymore. And in error, not try to find out yourself, he, I guess, got upset or whatever and wouldn't talk to us. So we were under the impression by what had happened on the phone call that he didn't want us there also. And then them lying to him, he didn't contact us because he thought we didn't want to be there and we just left because they had lied to him. So we were the main workers in the church. Most of the other people didn't do anything. And we brought new people there. The church was growing. lots of things were moving in the church and doing good. And some of the old people, I guess it ruffled feathers or something, and they felt threatened. So they lied and connived and did different things, and they saw this as a opportunity to get us out of there and not be bothered with us anymore. So that's what they did. And through all this, there's a lot of backstory in my family where my two aunts didn't really like my mother. It's all kind of an ongoing feud that was in the family, and they didn't really like that my mother and father were talking and going to church together and things like that and everything again. So they kind of got in the mix because there was a woman at the church that at one time had an infatuation with the pastor that didn't pan out, and now she kind of liked my dad, which was kind of creepy in itself. She was a very, very bad person, and I was thinking, oh gosh, no, 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 please no, please no, please no. And that really wouldn't have been good. And then plus she would have ended up being my stepmother if they got together. But fortunately, my dad still loved my mom, even though they were divorced and separated. He still loved her, and he didn't see himself with anybody else but my mother. So, which was never going to happen again. I guess irreconcilable differences and stuff, but they weren't going to get back together. Anyways, and so, yeah, she told lies to this woman, told lies to the judge and everything, and her house was behind the church, and so we couldn't be around her because she supposedly felt threatened and stuff and that. So she put the church address down, she put her house address, and she put my dad's parsonage house address down. So those three places were covered as where we couldn't be. So that made it also, even if things were corrected with the pastor, we couldn't go back onto the property again because we were, it was kind of like a restraining order against us. And that because she didn't feel safe, and that we might do something and everything. And those are places she went and was in. She put them down as if like they were her house or she had dominion over them or something. Anyways, so I couldn't go see my dad. I could call him and drive by and pick him up, or have him meet us down somewhere or something like that so he could see his grandkids and everything, or see me. But we never really ended up seeing each other a lot because he was still doing things and helping take care of the church, and a lot of our schedules conflicted and stuff. So most of the time we talked to him on the phone. And my dad was a short while after that. Things, the people that did what they did in trying to maneuver things to get us out of there, they had consequences for their actions. And many of them got sick or had accidents that happened to them, their families. People that had cancer, it came back. And then my dad was diagnosed with cancer of the prostate. And my dad was one that ate a very healthy diet and exercised all the time, and he was very active, and he did puzzles, and he played with his dogs, and he did the work around the church stuff. He went back and forth to church all the time. He rode his bike a lot. He was just very active. I mean, he would do sit-ups in the morning, okay? And he was above his 50s. Yeah, he was like in his 60s, I think. Latter 50s, early 60s, I think, at the time. Anyways, and when he was diagnosed with the prostate cancer, they were going to do surgery to remove the cancer. And he was supposed to go into the hospital, have the surgery, and then he was supposed to go back to the parsonage house. Well, my two aunts, mainly my one aunt that was more vicious in her bitterness toward my mother and our family, she took it upon herself to get rid of my dad's dogs and most of his belongings and things like that, and what knew that maybe he would need or something like that, she packed it up and took it to her house or put it in storage or something, and told the church that he wouldn't be able to do the things around the church anymore, and he wouldn't need the parsonage house. So he had no home to go back to. And she did this while he was in the hospital. And my dad, I guess, had a slight stroke or something, like a really tiny stroke or something, I guess, and he had lost some of his mobility after the surgery. And so it was supposed to be a temporary him going into like a nursing home where they would kind of rehab him, and then he would be able to be on his own again. That didn't happen. He did get the rehab and he was kind of better, but because he didn't have a home anymore, and because he couldn't do things for the church and the church was kind of falling apart because of the things that they had done that caused the consequences basically of the church splitting apart, because there were people left after what happened to us. There were some people that were left there. They had all kinds of consequences and different things started happening. One of the lady that did and trying to keep us away from my dad and lied about the different stuff. And there was another incident where she smacked my daughter in the face for getting a cookie. She says my daughter didn't ask for the cookie. Whether she asked for it or not, you don't smack another person's child in the face. And so yeah, I was very upset with her, and I brought it to attention, and she just kind of laughed it off like it was nothing. But she ended up getting cancer as well. And one of the deacons that wasn't really main one on doing the vote, he had already had cancer and it had went into remission. And when the things happened there at the church, he didn't speak up and say, no, this is wrong or whatever like that. His cancer ended up coming back. And the cancer that he had was very likely he was going to die from it. I don't know if it had he also had vitiligo. If anybody doesn't know what that is, it's where the pigment color of your skin starts to change and you kind of get splotches. Well, he was African American, so he was getting white patches and splotches all over him, and it was getting more. But I don't think the cancer had anything to do with skin or anything like that. I think it was something else. I think it was something with the gastrointestinal area or something. I'm not sure, but it was something that was could be terminal. Not brain cancer, but it was gastrointestinal or something, pancreas or something, maybe even liver, I don't know. I don't know what kind that the other lady had got, the one that had made it where we couldn't go to the church or my dad's house or anything like that. I'm not sure what kind of cancer she got, but anyways, my dad ended up in a nursing home, and he didn't get better. He got worse, and they weren't feeding him right and stuff. And they had him at first. They had him with a walker and everything. And actually, he was at one nursing home where it was a pretty bad one. And then they had changed him over to another one. And we didn't know that he was put in a nursing home. I had to basically hunt down where my dad was at because nobody told us. So I was frantic because I didn't even know where my own dad was, and it wasn't right. And of course, my aunts and stuff, none of them told us. When he was in the one nursing home, I had complained about it and different stuff, and he needed to be changed over and stuff. And my aunt would come and bring him like the diapers and stuff that he had to wear because he had incontinence at the time because of the prostate. Anyways, there was all kinds of stuff happening at that one. So then they ended up changing him to another facility, and he didn't really get better there either. And when he was in the first one, he was using a walker and doing fairly good and all that. And I don't know if he had another little stroke or something, but he ended up in a wheelchair. But I believe by just different things that they had said, it wasn't that it was he needed to be in the wheelchair, but it was more convenient for him to be in a wheelchair, because if he was in the walker and he happened to kind of stumble a little bit or whatever, he might fall, and that's what they were afraid of. So he was at that place for a while, and they weren't doing too good, and he was getting really skinny and everything, and I was like, they're not feeding him right or something. And I saw some of the things they were feeding him, and it was like they would feed him hot dogs and things like that. Not like really good nutritional stuff like they should have been. And so I said something and tried to check out another place that they could do and put him. And something happened. I think it was, I don't know what happened on my aunt's end, but something happened where he didn't have his medical insurance or something, and something had lapsed or something, and so they needed to change him from that place to a different one. So where they had changed him to was another facility that was closer actually to us, and it was a locked unit because I guess he had gotten a little worse, had another stroke or something, and he was in need of being in a locked unit because of his mind kind of not being all completely right where it needed to be, and he didn't remember a lot of things, and he didn't want to be there. He would try to go out the door, and they had him strapped into the wheelchair so he wouldn't fall out of the wheelchair or anything because his legs weren't working too good and everything. Anyways, so he had to be in a locked unit and everything. And for a while they were doing really good. They were feeding him good. He was doing really good. I don't know what exactly happened there, but all of a sudden then he got transferred over to another place. And that's where he's at now. And they're all right. They're pretty good, but a few of the staff are a little strange, and sometimes you can hear them yelling, like they're yelling at them because they don't like something that the patient does or something. And for a while the air was broke, and my dad was kind of like roasting in the room, and I said they needed to get him out of there because he's going to end up having heat stroke or something in his own room. And anyways, this kind of went on for a while. Whenever all this stuff was occurring with my dad, my mom had gotten cancer in her lymph nodes, and she went for surgery for that. And she had a lot of things happen with her home, and she lost her home and she ended up in a different place and kind of bouncing around. And about 3 years probably after that first cancer that she had, she ended up with breast cancer, and she opted for a double mastectomy because she didn't want to have to go back in again for surgery and have the other one taken off, because usually, because she had been in medical field, and she knew what the statistics usually were of ended up spreading to the other one or other parts of the body and stuff. And anyway, so she opted for that. And so here I am with both of my parents with cancer. My dad with prostate cancer, and my mother with the cancer in the lymph nodes, which ended up spreading after they had the surgery. A couple years later, found out it was in breast, and then so she had breast cancer. They're both survivors of, you've heard me talk about my dad, so you know he did NAS. My mother is still alive too. She's a survivor from breast cancer. And we didn't have a home church, and with all this, yes, I could be better, and how come God did this and this and that. God's the only one that brought me through all this, honestly. I don't blame God for what people in the church did whenever they didn't understand, or they thought they were doing best, or what we ought to be doing according to them. I don't answer to them. I answer to God, not them. And they did wrong, and they had consequences for it. We all have consequences when we do something wrong. But when we see in that movie, it brought how much time I lost. It brought to mind how much time I lost with my dad, because really these were maneuvers by Satan and his principalities. They really were using different people to accomplish things, to try to squash my faith and make me lose hope, and make me turn against God. You name it. Those were some of the purposes: to be bitter toward my own family. I was upset at my aunts for doing one. My aunt that did the main part of it, I was more upset with her than the other one, because the other one kind of would do what the other one told her, basically, and she was a little younger. But seeing stuff back and forth, and reading more of the scripture and delving more into the word, I learned to life's too short to be bitter and angry at someone and leave it at that. I went and I don't know exactly what I was doing, but I found out that my aunt that had done all these things and kept me from my dad, she passed away. She had lung cancer and she passed away. And so then my other aunt had been doing most of the things for my dad and taking care of his affairs and stuff. And she also herself was very, very ill and sick by herself, because she was widowed. And she has IBS and a lot of different things really bad going on with her. I don't know. She has cancer herself even, but she's very sickly. And I told her that I have nothing against her, that I still love her. She's family, and I forgive her. And if I did anything that upset her and offended her, for her to please forgive me. And I had my mother with me at the time, and she even hugged my mother, and they made amends, which was something miraculous in itself, because this bitterness between them started before my parents got married. And they were married probably I don't know, 15 years or so. I don't know. They were married quite a while though. And I was 6 when they got divorced, but they were married a while before that. And my mom ended up losing 4 other children. So very odd. She lost 4 children, and me and my brother survived. I had 4 children, lost 2. Same amount of children, but a little bit different. But it's very odd. But through all this, God's held me. God's kept me uplifted. And I see my dad, but he's not all there. So it's like he's there, but he's not there. So it's not quite the same as if he had his full faculties and I could have a conversation with him and everything is normal. It's not. And I really do look forward to him when we get to heaven, because he'll be renewed again, and my dad won't be sick anymore, and I believe he will remember me, and I can dance with my father, and I can hold my father, and I can hug my father and tell him how much I love him. I really do miss that. I tell him I love him and hug him and kiss him and tell him I can't wait to see Jesus. Is he happy when we go back to Jesus? And he says yes. So I don't know if he knows exactly what I'm saying. I think that he does, and when I say I love him, he says he loves me too. But when I hug him, he's so skinny and so frail. I'm kind of afraid to hug him in a way, because I don't want to hug him too hard and hurt him, But a lot of the hurt that the church did back then, I could have easily sat down and never went to church again, never picked up the Bible, never prayed, but I didn't, because even though that was as bad as it was, I love Jesus so much. I love the Lord. He's given me songs that are mostly still in my head, and the tunes and everything in my head. He's given me poetry. He's given me so many different things, and he has always been there. No matter what, he has always been there. And when I think that every single person is against me or has left me, he reminds me constantly that he's there and that he's not going anywhere. He's not going to leave me. He's not going to forsake me ever. I know that. I know it in my heart. I know it in my mind. I can feel it. I get confirmation of that all the time. And all the things, I haven't even scratched most of the surface of all the things that have happened in my life. And I have 50 years of memories. So I have a lot of wisdom and experience on different things, whether it's before I came to Christ or not. There are things that I believe that I was prayed for, watched over, that protected for what yet I am to do my entire life. Before I even came to Christ, I believe that I was watched over. I really do, because I had a purpose. Everyone has a purpose, and excuse me. I think that because he knows us, before we're even formed and in our mother's womb, I'm pretty sure that he knows exactly what purpose he has for us before we're even thought of. Well, we're thought of probably with him, but not like by our parents, and they're the instruments that he uses to create us. But I definitely know that we all have a purpose. We all have things that we are to do, and it is, whether anybody believes it or not, if they believe in Jesus or not, they have a purpose. He has a purpose for them. They choose to accept it or they choose not to accept it. But I honestly didn't think that I was still kind of emotional and hurt in a way over some of the things that had happened, of me not being able to be with my dad and my children, his grandchildren, to be around him that much, that they even did not have quality time with him as well, and they missed out because of that. I can never regain that time. I can never regain that, not here. Maybe in heaven they can, and I hope they can, but they can never regain it here. That time is lost. But I thought that some of those things were not still hurting, but whenever hearing Chelsi talk about that in her video, which I don't blame her for. Her video really touched me, and I understood what she was saying, and I thank her for that. And she was right. And then when I watched that movie, it just, I'm kind of an emotional person in a way, anyways, when it comes to my fiance kind of says touchy-feely movies that are like emotional tearjerkers, or as he puts it, chick flicks. I don't think it's a chick flick. I think it's just, I think it's heartwarming, but he looks at it a little differently. But yeah, that's it does get to me. But I'm not angry at God. I don't fault God for what people do, what man does. Man has faults. God doesn't. It wasn't him that did it. It was the people and their weaknesses and their flesh and their faults. And, maybe even some of our own faults in how we handled a certain situation. And if we would have been maybe bolder for Christ, we would have said, no, we're not leaving the church. We're going to wait till Pastor comes back and we're going to ask him directly ourselves. Because honestly, we should have went back that next weekend. But we were hurt and we believed what we heard on the phone. And we didn't question it. And it was really some good spiritual warfare training at that church, I could say. But a lot of the things happened in our life. And I just hope that this has kind of made a greater understanding and maybe helped someone else, that you don't have to be angry at God, and you don't have to be angry or feel betrayed by God, because he's not the one that betrayed you. Man's the one that had the shortcomings. Man's the one that has that weakness, not God. So don't be angry at God when something happens in your life, because Satan is, and his principalities and the weaknesses of the flesh of humans and
those people around you are the ones that do these things to you. Now, mind you, God allows those things to help us spiritually grow, try us, test us, and harden us so that we will be able to withstand